In October 1907, the United States stood closer to financial collapse than most Americans realize today. The country was not at war. There was no natural disaster. There was no foreign invasion. Yet the economic system that powered American life was minutes from shutting down. Banks were running out of cash. Trust companies were failing. Stock prices were collapsing. Ordinary people lined up in the streets, desperate to pull out their savings before it disappeared forever. There was no Federal Reserve. There was no government rescue plan. There was no central authority to stop the panic once it began. If confidence died, the system died with it. This crisis did not begin with a dramatic explosion. It began quietly, inside a fragile financial system built on optimism, leverage, and trust. At the start of the 20th century, America was rising fast. Industrial production had surged. Railroads connected distant markets. Steel mills, oil refineries, and factories ran non-stop. New fortunes appeared almost overnight. The country felt unstoppable. Yet beneath the surface, the system was dangerously unstable. Banks held limited reserves. Deposits funded risky investments. Money moved slowly across the country, but fear traveled instantly. When confidence cracked, there was no backstop. The United States had experienced financial panics before. The Panic of 1873 had triggered a long depression that lasted years. The Panic of 1893 had caused mass unemployment and bank failures. Each time, the pattern was the same. Speculation expanded during good times. Credit tightened when trouble appeared. Depositors rushed to withdraw cash. Banks failed because they could not meet withdrawals. Panic fed on itself. By 1907, these lessons were known. But the system had not changed. One key weakness lay in the rise of trust companies. Trusts were not traditional banks. They faced lighter regulation. They held fewer reserves. They promised higher returns to depositors. Investors loved them. Depositors trusted them. By 1907, trust companies held roughly 1/4 of all deposits in New York City. Their growth outpaced traditional banks. Their risk grew faster than anyone admitted. They were profitable during good times and dangerously exposed during bad ones. The spark that ignited the crisis came from an attempt to control the copper market. F. Augustus Heinz was a wealthy industrialist with deep political and financial connections. He believed he could corner the market on United Copper stock. The plan was simple. Buy up shares. Restrict supply. Force prices higher. The strategy failed almost immediately. Copper prices collapsed instead of rising. Heinz's brokerage suffered massive losses. Confidence evaporated overnight. Heinz was not just a speculator. He sat on bank boards. His associates held leadership positions across financial institutions. When his scheme collapsed, suspicion spread to every institution connected to him. Depositors began asking dangerous questions. Was their money safe? Did the banks have enough cash? Could they trust the system? Those questions produced immediate action. People rushed to withdraw their savings. Lines formed outside trust companies. The most vulnerable institutions soon emerged. The Knickerbocker Trust Company was one of the largest trusts in New York. It held tens of millions of dollars in deposits. When rumors tied it to Heinz's failed scheme, panic struck fast. In a single day, depositors withdrew millions. The trust could not survive the run. It closed its doors. That closure sent shockwaves through the entire system. If Knickerbocker could fall, any trust could fall. If any trust could fall, every bank was at risk. Depositors did not wait for confirmation. They acted first. Trust companies across New York faced runs. Banks stopped lending to one another. Clearinghouses froze credit. The stock market plunged as forced selling accelerated. The New York Stock Exchange faced imminent shutdown. If trading halted, confidence nationwide would collapse. At that moment, the United States had no central bank to intervene. The Treasury lacked the tools to inject liquidity quickly. Congress could not act fast enough. The president had no mechanism to stabilize markets. The system depended on private action. That meant it depended on one man. John Pierpont Morgan was 70 years old in 1907. He was not an elected official. He held no public office. Yet he commanded more influence over American finance than anyone alive. He had reorganized railroads, consolidated steel companies, stabilized markets during earlier crises. When others panicked, Morgan calculated. When others hesitated, Morgan acted. Bankers trusted him. Governments deferred to him. Markets followed him. As panic intensified, bankers and politicians turned to Morgan instinctively. He summoned the most powerful financial leaders in New York to his private library on Madison Avenue. The room became the command center of the American financial system. Morgan demanded complete transparency. Balance sheets were examined. Cash reserves were counted. Institutions were judged not by reputation but by solvency. Those that were fundamentally sound deserved support. Those that were not would be allowed to fail. Morgan worked through the night. He understood the psychology of panic. Confidence had to be restored quickly. The first priority was the stock exchange. Without liquidity, the exchange would close. Closing the exchange would signal total collapse. Morgan forced banks to pull $25 million in emergency funds. The money was delivered directly to the exchange. Trading continued. Panic slowed. But the deeper crisis remained unresolved. Trust companies still faced runs. Banks refused to lend to trusts. The divide between banks and trusts threatened to fracture the system permanently. Morgan knew that selective rescues would not work. In 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was passed. The United States finally created a central bank. Its mission was clear. Provide liquidity during crises. Act as lender of last resort. Prevent panic from destroying the economy. J.P. Morgan died later that year. His influence shaped American finance long after his death. The Panic of 1907 became a turning point. It exposed the fragility of unchecked capitalism. It forced the country to modernize its financial system. This story matters because it reveals how close America came to failure. It shows that financial systems are built on trust, not numbers alone. When trust disappears, even strong economies can collapse. In 1907, America survived because one man understood that reality. The institutions created afterward exist because the country never wanted to rely on that luck again. If you want to understand modern crashes, you need to understand this one. Subscribe for deep stories about money, power, and the moments that shaped history. History never stops repeating.